Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of That Podcast. Enjoy the show.
What else you got for us, DJ?
Now, what did I originally say? Oh, yeah. So we're talking about Spooktacular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. We have this big event every year on Wednesday, and people are going to be wearing costumes, and there's going to be games, and there's going to be fun. There's going to be trunk or treat is where we have different. We have, at Atonement, we have life groups, and life groups are folks that care about each other and walk in life together. And so for the trunk or treat, we usually have a trunk from many of the different confirmation life groups, like 6th grade through 12th grade. Their groups do it, and they all get dressed up and stuff like
They
that.
do great trunks, too. Like, they get into
Sometimes
it.
they, go, all out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that's what we have going on this upcoming Wednesday, and it's Halloween. It's just...
It's a
just what
great
it is.
event.
I had a call from someone who asked me...
So many people.
Yeah. Literally,
Yes.
thousands of people will be through here in 4 hours.
Yeah.
And so...
And for all 4 hours, there is not really a slow time.
Yeah.
No, because there are people that,
Wait for it to start and...
wait for it to start. Because, sometimes we will open the doors and let them come in a little early. And it'll be like, no, you can't do that. Because they're here.
Yeah.
They're ready. And then we'll also be like, oh, yeah, the rock wall line is, so long. So, actually, we're going to be here, an extra hour. Just letting the kids climb the wall.
Every year I've had a different job. This year I would like my job to be the clicker with the thing just to count
Just
all
to
the people
know.
coming through. Just because we bought
Ooh,
clickers.
Yeah. We should do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Last year I was I went as Luigi,
Ooh.
and I had kids come and take pictures with
Yeah.
me. It was a thing. It was.
What,
it
do you
was
have a
fun.
costume for this year?
If I followed suit and did what I did last year, I would go as DJ in an 80s tracksuit.
Ah, yes.
And maybe that'll happen. Although my partner in crime he loves Halloween and is planning on going in something else. So
Okay.
I haven't decided yet.
I am
what I'm
so
gonna-
excited for that only because we've had this costume for a year and never used it, and I just need us to use this costume.
and that's what
Yeah.
Mark is doing.
Yeah.
You know what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't spoil it.
Yeah, you have to be here
Unless
for
he changes his
Spooktacular.
mind, but we've literally had this costume since last Christmas.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm sure it's gonna be something. We'll figure something out. One year I went as Bat Dad. I just had a Batman mask.
Yeah.
They're like, "Who are you?" I'm Bat Dad. And people knew who I was talking about, so that made me feel good.
I wasn't here for last year's, but the year before it was cold, so I wore my dragon onesie. My
Yes.
Oh,
PJs, my fuzzy
Yes.
PJs. That just so happens to be dragon and it had wings.
Well, and 2 years ago I was running one of the fire pits for s'mores.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't think I wore any costume, but my daughter dressed up as me.
Yep.
So
Oh yeah, that was that year.
so was
that
kinda
grade,
fun.
those girls.
Did they
dressed
do
up-
a
all the pastors?
pastor
Yeah.
All four of them.
Oh yeah,
That's great.
and they did it better than we did. That's for sure.
I would have no doubts about that.
Yeah, it's great.
That's a great group.
So, but I got this phone call from someone who was like, they said to me, what does the church think about Halloween? Because Halloween is, it's not very Christian. I know we've talked about this before, but I thought it'd be a nice little opportunity just to review this real quickly. For anyone wondering about Halloween, Halloween is translated as the Holy Evening or All Hallows Eve. That's where we get the word Halloween. And it's tied to the day after October 31st, which is November 1st, which is called All Saints' Day. And during the Middle Ages in the West, specifically, there were 3 big holidays throughout the year. There were holidays when you were expected to be in church. It wasn't a question about it. It's like everybody in the community was like, "We're going to church. Let's do it." It was Easter, Christmas, and All Saints' Day. And the thing about it is, all those celebrations begin with an evening celebration because in the Hebrew calendar, the next day starts at sunset the day before. So technically, we're recording Friday, 3:25 p.m. Saturday, if we were following the Hebrew calendar, would begin in a couple of hours. as soon
Okay.
as the sun goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens a couple hours before, or what happens the evening before at dusk on All Saints' Day, the beginning of All Hallows' Eve? And it's this celebration that was aimed at making a mockery of the powers of sin, death, and the devil. And so trick or treat was a way to get kids excited about the All Saints' Day, because on All Saints' Day we celebrate that our loved ones who have died are risen. It's something very similar in Mexico.
Oh.
They have Dia
Dia
de
de
los
los
Muertos. Or did I say that wrong? I probably said it wrong. Dia de la Muerte? Is that am I saying that right or wrong? I think I'm saying it wrong.
It's the day where
It's
like they
the
do
Day
all
of
of
the Dead.
Yeah.
Day of the Dead.
Yeah, and it's a celebration of if anyone's ever watched the Disney movie Coco, it's right in line with that. But it's a Christianity has something similar, and it's All Saints' Day, where it's
They're also close together.
they
too.
are.
Like I think the Saturday after is.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. The
Day.
Christian calendar is different depending on the influence behind it, but All Saints' Day is recognizing that our loved ones who have died are still alive in the church triumphant. They're the saints.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They're risen, right?
Mhm.
So All Saints' Eve, or the Holy Evening, All Hallowed Eve, became this time of celebration before church the next day. So people would have feasts, they would have parties. Kids would go around trick-or-treating as a way of mocking the things that go bump in the night, the things that we would be afraid of.
Yep.
So when you think about what are the traditional Halloween costumes? Can you think of what would be a tradition? You watch The Great Pumpkin,
yeah.
Charlie Brown, every year.
Witches.
Witches. So,
Ghosts.
So, but just
The three kids from Nightmare Before Christmas, their costumes are based on that.
Yeah.
perfect. So let's analyze those costumes real quickly. The traditional witch costume, is it scary?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it scary?
It's a creepy lady with a big pointy hat and
So when you have a child walking around, what color is the skin, first of all?
green.
Green. And what does the witch usually have on the end of their nose?
Oh, wart.
A wart. So you have a little child that puts green face paint on and puts a little prosthetic wart or whatever it is, and they got the little black pointy hat, right? What does a witch ride on?
A
broom.
Yeah.
Or a
Boy,
vacuum.
what
Keep going.
well, and with the broom and with the green face and the black hat and all that, carrying a broom, what a silly picture
Right.
of something to be afraid of. When you talk about a ghost, well, what does a ghost look like?
Usually it's a white sheet.
A white sheet with
What
two
is-
holes in it.
So the idea of the scariness of a ghost is this is a spirit that's you can't see it. It's gonna get you. Well, you wear a white costume with holes cut through it as a mockery of this idea that this is greater than the power of God to bring life. How about a costume of the devil? What is the imagery of the devil?
Red horns,
Red
red tail.
A little
pitchfork.
fork. It's always like a
Yeah.
little chubby
Yeah.
baby usually.
little itty bitty little goat legs, right? And a forked tail and red hair and pointy ears with a little trident, right? That entire costume is meant to be a mockery of the power of the devil, all of it, and a mockery of kind of the idea of these woodland creatures in pagan culture called satyrs or fauns, which are not like the devil, but the devil is made into being a mockery as like this is what we're scared of. These are the things that we're afraid of. That's the point, that they would wear the masks and do these things. Now, I will agree that in modern day, when we take the faith out of something like Halloween, well, Halloween becomes just like anything else that we secularize. It loses its meaning and its intent and the fun of it, and can often just become something gross. Like, think about I don't want to demean any store, but I took my son to a Halloween store, and I'm like, this place is just gross.
There's only one Halloween store, sir. We all know which one you're talking about.
It pops up in the weirdest of places.
Did you know they're doing Christmas now?
I am
Really?
excited to see that.
Well, I hope it's not nearly as gross as, you just walk around like, ugh, look at it. That's just gross. But that's the whole point of Halloween is about building community and finding hope where it actually lies. And it's meant to have just a little bit of that macabre spookiness, which comes from the French. They had this celebration called the Dance Macabre. And all these things tie together. But as far as like Halloween, if it's antithetical to the church, of course not. The church, Christianity, like birthed the celebration of Halloween. It's when we take the Christian fun part out of it that it becomes something that it's not supposed to be. Same with Christmas. Same with Easter. If all you're thinking is the secular things, well, then you're missing the true meaning of what's going on. That's the same thing with Halloween. So, so that's my little yearly message about that.
Halloween.
I was just thinking that the Winifred Sanderson said it best, that the point of Halloween is a night to frolic where children wear costumes and run amok, and that's what
Amok.
exactly
Amok.
that's what we should be doing, is coming together as a community and wear your costumes, run amok,
Have a party.
have fun.
And that's what we do with Spooktacular here. This is a safe place to have fun, and it's loving and caring for your neighbor. And we're gonna be goofy and spooky.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's fun to dress up.
Absolutely.
It's make believe is fun. As long as you understand it's make believe.
Yep.
And not something nefarious or
So can I dig my witch's hat out of my closet and
Of
wear
course you can. Is it gross?
I don't think so. I think it's
Okay,
green.
then go right ahead. Go right ahead. You're making a mockery of things that just
Cool.
have no power over you. So that's Halloween.
Nice.
Anyway, so bringing it back to what I said way at the beginning is let's talk a little bit about what we've been reading lately. And you guys, I'll let you go first because I've been talking too much.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you have what? You have like a
We're
connection.
all reading very different books,
Yeah.
okay? Let's
So-
just first start that conversation
what
with this.
what I'm trying to understand is like she has like an update to your Kindle. Like when you
So
we
kind of like the app Spotify.
so we're gonna get you a new app.
right
DJ.
on.
It's called
okay.
Goodreads. So you can actually, here, I'll pull it up on my phone so you can see it here. So you can track like
What
you
you're
can have
reading.
what you're reading. You can track what your friends are reading, and you can see like
Updates from them.
updates, and you can set goals for your reading and things like that. Some people read much faster than other people.
I see. Are you reading the same thing?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No. So I read. Well, I don't read faster than Sarah. I just listen to audiobooks
Yeah.
over
Oh,
podcasts.
sure.
And
That's what
Dana
you're
reads
doing down in
really
that
like
office.
good, feel good, like
My
not
book-
feel good, like
They're not, no, I don't read to learn. I don't read to better myself. I read to leave this plane of existence for a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
It's an escape.
Yes.
and I read a lot of like nonfiction,
Yes.
sad books, similar to my like my serial killer documentaries.
Yes.
I'm like, let's read about World War II. Let's read about like Indian boarding houses.
Yeah.
And sad things.
I get Sarah's updates, and I look at them and I go,
Are
that
you
would make me
okay?
depressed. No, thank you. I've read one book recommended by Sarah. It was a very good book, but the conversations.
Oh yeah, that was a good book.
It was so good that you're like, I've had my
That Sarah
fill.
doesn't remember.
Yeah. I borrowed that book to somebody and they never gave it back to me.
Oh, sad.
Hard Conversations with the Black Man. It's a really great book. It's by
Oh.
a NFL. He played in the NFL,
Yeah.
and now he's a sports
Broadcaster?
broadcaster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I'll
Yeah.
have to look that one up.
And he did like a YouTube show off of it
Yep,
too. where
and he also
would
has,
met
like,
with
a-
different people.
He wrote it. He like wrote the original book, and then there's a like preteen version, and then there's a kids book version. So it's like he took it, simplified it down, and then simplified it down. So that way it's multiple versions. So like you can read it to kids. So
It
like
wasn't Tony Dungy, was it?
no, it
No.
was. Oh, I'm gonna say his name wrong.
Trying trying to think which broadcasters.
Oh, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man by load. Emmanuel Acho.
Oh, okay.
Acho.
Okay. I didn't realize he was broadcasting. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What are you reading then, Dayna?
Currently?
Well, yeah.
Because I tend to be the person that starts a book, gets kind of bored, picks up another one, goes back to the other one, goes back. But
Melissa does the same thing. She's got about 8 different books in her house, and she's reading
like if
them
you
with it
look at my Goodreads, there's almost always a book that's been on there for like several months.
Okay.
But the current book I'm reading is called The Temptation of Magic.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
about a girl whose family is like some form of mythical creature, but they're like hiding from their like mythical government
Sure.
and then trying to like keep her powers from being found out. And then something happens in her small little town.
So is it fantasy or science fiction?
Fantasy.
Okay.
And then some like special agent dude essentially shows up and she's like, oh no.
Oh, no.
I'm only halfway through it, so that's all I know
Is it good?
so far.
Excellent.
Yeah. I read fantasy books.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay.
That's
I just finished. Well, for enjoyment, like I'll read things that are fantasy or science fiction. I actually just finished in the last couple of years. I've read like the entire Percy Jackson series.
Ooh.
Mariah's reading those right now.
They're good ones.
I've never read them.
I read Percy Jackson series, and then I read this. The guy who wrote those wrote like tons
A lot of
books.
them. There's a lot of them.
Then he had one, and Percy Jackson is based on like the Greek and Roman pantheon. But then he did one on the Scandinavian pantheon.
Oh.
And I read that one too.
Was it good? As good?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
all right. He's got one on the Egyptian pantheon. I kind of like fell off at that point and,
I was
and
like, I
got
think
busy doing other things. But
Is the Egyptian pantheon the new one?
I don't know. I don't know. That was the first series that he wrote, I guess, is the Egyptian deities, and then he got into Percy Jackson and it got really popular. And then he did a spin-off one called Magnus Chase, which is about Odin and Thor and those guys. Very good, really good reading. Like it's got that same kind of like Harry Potter feel for
It's the classic
kids to get into read.
main character and something.
Something happening on the side.
Yep, books.
Yes. So very good stuff.
Oh yeah, the Trials of Apollo.
Yeah.
Chronicles.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's that's all in the Apollo series too. I read that too. So, all good stuff. I usually read pretty quickly. If I start reading, especially something that's enjoyable, like a fantasy or fiction or something that's I'm just reading it just to have an escape or like something to enjoy. I'll usually read it pretty fast. Other things though that I like to read that I brought with me are things that have just kind of like piqued my interest lately. And have you guys ever heard of Lee Strobel?
No.
No. Okay, so Lee Strobel had a movie made about him for his first book that's called The Case for Christ.
Okay.
And
Sounds familiar.
he's a newspaper guy. He's trained as a lawyer and was a newspaper guy in Chicago. I think he wrote for like the Chicago Tribune. And was an atheist. He wasn't a believer, but his wife came to faith. And he said he in his own words, he was like, I got super jealous because I'm like, the woman I fell in love with, she's going to be totally different now. The Moonies have got her, basically, is what he was thinking. Like the crazies.
Shave her head soon.
Yeah,
Oh no.
yeah. The crazies have gotten her. So she's like,
Are the Moonies still around?
Yes.
Okay.
probably. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. And she and he was surprised by like her behavior. It wasn't that she got more distance. She was becoming like more loving to him. And he was just like, well, there must be something to this. So he began doing like an investigative report on who is Jesus and the truth of the claims about Christianity, about Jesus. And he was blown away by the evidence. Like as a lawyer, he's like, you need certain things to be evidence of truth within a court of law. So he was using those type of methods and he was speaking to ancient scholars and historical critical experts on the Bible and psychologists about like the rise of Christianity, all these things, and he wrote this book called The Case for Christ, which gives tons of evidence for Jesus that's just all collected in a neat little place in one spot. Like the stuff that I went to seminary to study, you know, he's gathered all the stuff.
Like
and
here's
he's
250 pages
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
all the info.
Here's a
Here-
book.
Here, take this. Yeah. And give us thousands of dollars for this one book. So he wrote that, and then he wrote some other books. He wrote a book called The Case for Easter, which is an in-depth investigation on, is the resurrection possible? Like, is that true? Well, this one he wrote in the 2000s called The Case for a Creator. And it is, he investigates the scientific evidence that points toward God. And I'm not one who ever was like, you know, I need evidence in science to back up my belief in God. I was always just like, well, you know, I get like science is trying to look at how the world was made. But for me, it's like, well, something had to have started it. Like that was all the evidence that I needed. So it's been kind of fun to really dig into how much evidence is actually out there in scientific circles for God. And, you know, in science, they don't say, well, God did it, but because that's not actually scientific inquiry, but rather it's what evidence within like the scientific method, when you study something that you come to, well, you can infer like what would have caused this. And there's more and more evidence through many different scientific disciplines that the best way to explain something, like, for example, the living cell, is not through random evolutionary processes like natural selection, which is basically just like over enough time, things evolve and change, and you'll end up with a human. The problem with that is that with, like, for example, natural selection explains why there's differences of variation. Like, there's a reason that natural selection is the reason that Sarah and DJ and Dayna don't look identical. Like, there's variation on a theme, right? The problem is that it was thought by Darwin that everything can be explained through natural selection. And the more we learn and develop technology like microscopes that go smaller and smaller and telescopes that go bigger and bigger, is that is not an adequate explanation for pretty much anything that has to do with the big questions of life, conscience, mind. Then a much better explanation for the human cell, for example, or any living cell, is that there was an intelligence behind it because it's so complex. Are you following what I'm saying? So, and that's what science does historically is it points to evidence. Like Newton's thing was, he wrote the Principia Mathematica because he's like, the more I study the universe, I see that there are patterns, and those patterns can be quantified mathematically. In his own writing, this magnum opus of scientific genius, where we get the calculus. If anyone had to suffer through calculus, you can blame Newton. But in there, he talks about that. I've written this because my hope is that thinking people will come to know God, because here is evidence for the mind of God. Like there's patterns that we can see. So obviously there must have been some rational thinker behind all of creation, that it couldn't have been just some random process. What I've been doing in reading The Case for a Creator is discovering that it's not just a philosophical idea, but there is tons and tons of evidence in nature for something beyond just random processes that point to a creator. So very interesting book. Tons of stuff that I've talked about before that I'd love to have a whole conversation on that by itself. But there's something else that I want to point to. And so this will be a teaser for the next one that we're going to, as I look at the time here. This book is called Biblical Critical Theory by Christopher Watkin. And I want to give a big shout out and
Remember, I thought you
thank
said
you.
like walking like the actor.
That's
and
what I was thinking. I was going to ask that.
Yeah. More cowbell is what it says over and over
I was
again.
gonna say, not only is he maybe a murderer, he's also an author.
But no, this book was bequeathed to me from our very own Gail Carlson after she did a deep dive into this. And the
Interesting.
foreword is from one of our favorite
Yep.
Reformed
See that.
theologians here at Atonement, Timothy Keller. And the reason I bring this book up is because it seems like the Holy Spirit, at least for me at this point in my life, has been showing me all kinds of evidences in history and science and the natural world for why we are the way we are today.
Mhm.
And I kind of brought this up about the podcast that I've been listening to. It seems like we are coming out of this malaise. Now, you guys weren't born in 90 before. You were both born in the 90s, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
But not like 1991. Like your entire life has been in what would be considered post-Christian America.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably don't have a whole lot of major memories prior to 2001. Like the
No.
events of that are enshrined in your identity.
Mhm.
Well, I will tell you that prior to 1991, the idea of a Christian worldview was normative everywhere.
Mhm.
Now, you guys are in the Midwest, and it's been here longer than in other parts of the country. But a big part of my formation years was growing up in the West Coast, where the idea of a Christian worldview as a given was kind of weird. Like, it was like, it's a whole different way of looking at life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what we're discovering after 30 years of social sciences and just life in the world, and especially in Western culture, whether it's Europe or North and South America, or any place that's been influenced by Western culture, everything that we value comes directly from Christianity, like all of it. And biblical critical theory is basically a step-by-step walk through the Bible and shows the fingerprints of these different stories that give us meaning, that help to explain why we are the way that we are today, especially for people that have lost the Christian story and don't know it. That why in secular culture is, for example, if there is no God and there is no meaning to anything, because we're all just part of a natural process of random actions within nature between energy and matter and time, why do we care about equality? I mean,
Well,
why does that matter?
Well, and that kind of explains the whole, like, I can be a good person without needing faith.
And what we've discovered is you can be a good person,
But it's
it's standing on sand. And the Christian response would be like, look, you don't need to be a Christian to be a good person. Anyone can be a good person because everyone is made in the image of God. So there's meaning behind the goodness, and there's a determining factor, because if it's all natural processes, well, then who defines what good and evil is? What does it matter? Why is it wrong to take a baby and to throw it up and catch it on a pitchfork, as my psychology teacher used to say? Have you ever thought, both of your eyes are wigging out, but why is that wrong?
Well, I was just like, that's what you picked as an example, sir?
because you're going to hurt them.
Because I know both of you would go, what? Like there's an aversion to it.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why that's wrong to you is because of a Christian worldview. You don't have to be a Christian to know that we are inundated. We're swimming in the Christian waters. To quote Tom Holland, the next book I'm going to read, his book is called Dominion.
You got a lot of these books by people that sound a lot like
Also
famous
actors.
Well, I got Christopher Walken on this one, and then Tom Holland doing
They're really
Spider-Man.
taking advantage of that SEO.
Yeah.
But that's the point that I'm making is what this book is talking about. So how about we wrap up this episode, and then I want to have the next one. I have some things from biblical critical theory that are just statements that I want us to discuss.
Awesome.
And see where we go. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Do I need to close this, or are we going to
Sure. Why not?
Pray us out of here.
We
I
can
can
do
never remember how to close this stuff.
just
just gotta
pray and
pray.
All right,
I'll do the
I'll
other
pray.
thing. Ryan can come back randomly.
Dear God, thank you for my friends here, and we ask that you would help to make Ryan healthy and whole sooner rather than later. He's been fighting a cold. Please bless everyone who's hearing this conversation, and hope what we are talking about rings true to their own experience, what they have going on in their life, and that there are words of hope and community that hopefully we are expressing that comes from your goodness and all that you do for us. So thank you for our time together this day. Bless our where we are going until we can meet one another again. All this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of That Podcast. Don't forget that you can find us every Sunday morning at 9 and 10:30, either here at Atonement, 4601 South University Drive in Fargo, or online at atonement.live or atonementfargo.org. We also have a YouTube channel where you can find our services live, or a wide variety of resources. Again, that's YouTube, atonement.live, or atonementfargo.org. So for all of us here at Atonement, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another riveting episode of That Podcast.